We're live. Welcome back, everybody. If you just tuned into the stream, we just wrapped up the injury report. Myself, Ian Hart, it's Dwayne McFarland. And now, as we always do, post-injury report, now we talked about the bad stuff. We're going to talk DFS. Myself and PFF_Jared Evans, here to talk about the main slate, week 5. We're not talking about Kyle Pitts. Sorry. That's not happening because Kyle Pitts is playing at 9:30 in the morning. No one's going to be awake for that because we're going to be too busy building DFS lineups for the main slate. Jared, are you ready for A.J. Brown, wide receiver 1 season to finally come to fruition? This was the move behind taking him in best ball in March in the second round because we knew there would be no one else to compete with targets. Julio Jones is out. A.J. Brown is in. Jacksonville defense is terrible. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, man, what better way to celebrate A.J. Brown wide receiver 1 week than also on Derrick Henry chalk week? It's a beautiful thing.
It really is the perfect pivot. You could not write a better script for getting off Derrick Henry as a chalk with A.J. Brown at wide receiver. I don't know what the rostership will kind of shake out. Again, our ownership projections are over on pff.com. You can go check those out. But they're going to get updated throughout the weekend. You really want to look at them during the last update. That's really when you get the most accurate projections. So right now, no idea what Brown is going to be in. I don't know if he's actually in there in the player pool. I'm not sure if you can pull that up, but
yeah, I saw him at like 10%.
Okay.
I feel like people are a little hesitant to play guys coming back from injuries, especially their first game back. But A.J. Brown is one of those guys that everybody's really excited to play. So I think he'll end up being pretty popular.
Yeah, and if it stays within that 10%, I mean, 10% that's kind of like the middling range. It's a lot of good players kind of fall in that category. If he gets to 20 plus, that's really like the 20%, 15% is really when it's like, okay, like this guy is like chalky, very popular player. Because again, like your players that are good are going to garner some type of rostership. But we're not here to talk about roster. We're here to talk about the plays, the targets, the stacks, all the DFS goodness. So Jared, I'll kick it off to you. We'll start at the quarterback position. I know that you released an article on the website today, your DFS. What is the article called exactly?
It's DFS tournament picks.
Picks. And I know you have a quarterback that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I wrote up Trey Lance. This was before the news that George Kittle
you're backing out.
But no, I'm not backing out. I'm excited to get him at lower ownership because we're rostering him for his legs, not so much his arm. He didn't really look that great last week.
Confirmed. Did not.
As a passer. He was really hesitant and kind of leaned on his legs. Like those eyes would just go right down the second he came off his first read, which is honestly great for fantasy because he's just going to take off and run the ball. The Cardinals are averaging their defense the most rushing yards per carry among all teams. So that is probably pretty good for Lance. And then I think Eli Mitchell is going to be playing. So you got Eli and Sermon. I think the 49ers offense can put up a bunch of points. The game is a 49 total, I believe.
It's going down, though.
Going down, yeah.
Yelling timber. Going down.
Whatever, man. Lance scored 20 points in one freaking half of football last week, so I'm on board.
Yeah, I mean, I get the play. I see the line at 50 here when I'm looking at the PFF website, but as I had alluded to, the line is starting to drop now that we're getting more updates on these injuries. Do you think Lance is going to be popular now? I know you mentioned before that he will be less popular because there's no Kittle. Do you think that will stay?
So let's see. So when I wrote up the article yesterday, he was at 2% projected rostership.
Oh, okay, so yeah, then.
So I don't think he'll be that popular.
He'll probably be sub 5.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people are going to be skittish because Justin Fields failed in his debut also.
He is still yet to fire.
yeah, exactly. So I'll take a shot. And there's a bunch of guys on this slate that you want to pay up for. Like you want to get up to Derrick Henry. You want to get up to some of these Vikings wide receivers that are in a great spot against the Lions. So there's definitely salary to spend where paying down at quarterback actually can make sense in building a good roster.
Yeah, I wrote up Trey Lance a little bit in my DFS cheat sheet, but you can check over on pff.com. I like the discount on Lance because you're getting exposure to Kyler Murray. You know, what I found, and we talked about this on the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast with Ian Hart, the DFS preview show. What we talked about was if you look at the highest scoring quarterbacks from last week, all the top 6 played in 3 games. So they were all playing against each other. Like when one quarterback goes off, the other quarterback usually goes off too. So we know Kyler Murray's going to have a good game. So what you do to get exposure to Kyler Murray without having to spend the $8,000 to get him on your roster is why you roster Trey Lance. Because if Kyler Murray fires, it usually is going to correlate to Trey Lance firing as well. So I think that's kind of like the move I'm paying down for Trey Lance. So I like the price point. Yes, having George Kittle is definitely not ideal, but like you mentioned, it means that he'll probably run more. And honestly, I think that he was going to struggle passing the ball against the Cardinals anyway. You know, if you look at the Cardinals defense, I know you highlighted how bad they are against the run. It's really the opposite against the pass. They're actually 5th in PFF coverage grade and 1st in explosive pass play percentage allowed to the pass. So I think Deebo Samuel makes a lot of sense from a stacking perspective. I believe he had a 40% target share with Lance at quarterback. And then that's not even like considering, okay, he got that one long touchdown, but it's like all the other throws, it was like a lot of Deebo Samuel. So you're feeling great about Deebo. I mean, Deebo's like a top 15, maybe even like top 12 guy in season-long leagues. So Deebo would probably be the only guy I would consider to stack. You can try to go back to Ayuk because, I mean, look, Ayuk was good last year when guys were hurt. Like that point blank. Like that is 100% true. And right now, George Kittle's hurt. So if you liked Ayuk last year and that's why you drafted him in like the 4th round, then you should like him in this matchup. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you should like him in this spot. Again, he's a lot cheaper. Deebo's going to be mega popular now. The Kittle's out. And it is a different quarterback. They've had a whole week of practice. You don't know how things could change out. If I were to bet on a week where Deebo Samuel sees a very suppressed target share, it would probably be this week because of the change of quarterback. Like we have a whole change. The offense could be different. Deebo may not be as involved as now you see Brandon Ayuk, who's what's Ayuk's price anyway? I mean, he's got to be like, is he below 5K or is he above?
Yeah, he's 4,500. He's cheap.
Yep, he's cheap. And this is a late game too. So if you stack Deebo, I think that you could, I mean, Ayuk's going to not be popular. So I think that he's an interesting pivot. But you also don't even just stack with Lance necessarily. Like rushing, like you mentioned it before, like you want rushing quarterbacks. Like you're not using him for his arm. So you don't necessarily need to stack him at all. You just bring it back with Cardinals players, whether it's James Conner, Chase Edmonds is banged up, DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore. He could see an expanded role with Chase Edmonds banged up in the passing game. So I think there's a lot of interesting there, but it's still a game you want to target, get some exposure to. But because it is a late game, it is a game to be cognizant of ownership and to pivot off of chalk in the late window.
I like the Ayuk call, man. That's a tough one. If you play Lance with Ayuk, you can just do anything else with your
dude. Look, man. The only reason I say it is just because that's why Ayuk was not like. That's when I remember the stat. It was like 3rd in expected fantasy points per game. Brandon Ayuk behind. It was like Deontay Johnson, it was behind Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams last year. Like during the entire season when he was out, when there was no competition, when there was no George Kittle and or / Deebo Samuel. So now that one of them is gone, removed from the picture, like this would make sense for Brandon Ayuk to have a bigger game. So we'll see though. And because he's burned people so many times, he's not going to be very popular, but we know he's good. We know
there was a time last year when Deontay Johnson was constantly burning people. He was getting hurt in the middle of the games, but we all knew that he was a really talented player, and he was priced at like 4,500 and then posted like a 30 burger and won people tournaments one week.
Wait, who is this? Sorry.
Deontay Johnson.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So we'll see.
Play some Brandon Ayuk this week. Here we go. All right, let's get into other quarterbacks. So that's a pay down option. Kyler Murray is obviously in play. We don't need to talk about. There's a lot of good quarterbacks on the slate that you can go to. Is there someone that you're kind of gravitating towards that's in the higher tier that you would like? Okay, my first line, I'm making one single entry lineup. This is the quarterback I would go with.
Ooh, that's a good question. I was reading Ben Brown's stacking article, and
shout out to Ben Brown.
Yeah. I liked his Justin Herbert call. He had Herbert with Keenan Allen, and then bringing it back with OBJ, who ruined all my DFS lineups last week.
You're not alone.
but I think that game kind of could be like one of those sneaky shootouts. I think the total is only like 47, 48, but you just have two really good offenses. And I think when they both get down in the red zone, they both can score touchdowns. I'm a little worried about Baker's injury, but I think that game could definitely shoot out. Mike Williams is also interesting. He's so expensive that nobody's going to want to play him.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting if you look at pace of play, plays per game, Chargers third, Browns eighth. So two teams that are inside the top 8 in terms of plays per game. It's the only matchup that features two teams like that. The other one, that's the only matchup that has those two types of teams that fit that criteria. You have the Lions and Vikings also are in the top 10 in terms of plays per game. But Arizona and 49ers are both top 12. And the Titans and the Jaguars are out there. The Chiefs aren't in there with the Bills. So yeah, it definitely it should be a sped up game. There should be points galore. And Herbert has just looked so good. Justin Herbert has just looked, he's looked fantastic this year. I like that call from Ben Brown, and I'll definitely be sprinkling and send Justin Herbert. Again, it goes back to the fact that Baker Mayfield, we can see him have a ceiling game. So, and that comes at the expense of Justin Herbert. I think we could see one of those things playing out. For me, I like Tom Brady a lot as an option. I know he's kind of not been great the last couple of weeks after starting the season basically on fire, 9 touchdown passes. He's thrown 1 touchdown pass over the past 2 games. But, I mean, I just like this spot against Miami. I don't think Miami's defense is very scary. They've allowed the second most receptions of 20-plus air yards. Brady leads the NFL in PFF passing grade on throws of 20-plus air yards so far this season. So I think this is a good get-right spot for him. He's got the Patriots out of the way, a very emotional game. He didn't play great statistically in that game, but, I mean, he has all the weapons. There's one less guy to really talk about in terms of trying to stack because there's no Gronk. You have a really cheap Cameron Brate. You have Mike Evans. You have a cheap Antonio Brown who saw a ton of opportunities last week and just didn't deliver. You have Chris Godwin. So there's tons of great options. And then Miami also presents a ton of bring back options where you stack with the Bucks. You can go to Devontae Parker. You can go Mike Gesicki, Jalen Waddle. Like you just pick one of those guys that fits into your build because we know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have one cornerback left. Jamal Dean is going to play, but they don't have Carlton Davis. They don't have Sean Murphy-Bunting. Richard Sherman he couldn't cover anybody against the Patriots. Like Jacoby Myers was all over him. I believe that Sherman gave up a nearly perfect pass rating when targeted. So Jacoby Brissett, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but if you watch the last 2 Miami games, and it pains me to say this, but I mean, almost all the production has basically come in garbage time, like in the fourth quarter, but that's Jacoby Brissett. Like that's what you're looking for a bring back option. You're not rostering Gesicki or Waddle or Parker because you're like, oh, they're going to come out and just dominate. It's like, no, like they're going to be down. And Jacoby Brissett has enough YOLO in him that's what he did. Like I was rewatching that game and Jacoby rolls out in the fourth quarter down by 21, just chucks it deep to Devontae Parker, who hauls it in for a 40-yard gain. So that's how I see this game kind of playing out. Fournette is really popular. So I think that the passing game for Brady won't be nearly as popular. We'll see how Giovanni Bernard's health status being active affects Fournette. I think people may have just been like, no, I don't care. Like I'm still playing Fournette, but his ceiling is definitely limited with Bernard now back in the fold. So I like Tom Brady and kind of like an onslaught type of projection. And then also, as I honorable mention, Giants, Cowboys seems like a good spot for both quarterbacks. A lot of good pieces. If I'm not game stacking that game, I do definitely want to grab some pieces from that game, whether it's the running backs and wide receivers.
Yep. I like the Brady call. That's especially in the context of this slate where there aren't multiple 50-plus total games. So yeah, Brady makes sense. I like it.
All right, let's go to running back, the top running back position. All right, so Derrick Henry. He's the most popular guy. We have 2 other 8K price running backs. McCaffrey's not going to play. Kamara has a tougher matchup against the football team and is turned into Derrick Henry light. They do not throw him the ball anymore. We'll get into it. And then you have Dalvin Cook, who is pretty questionable. I don't know if you tuned in. I know you were in a meeting earlier, so I'm not sure if you tuned in, but Mario is very pessimistic about Dalvin Cook and whether he's going to be able to be effective if he's even playing. I've moved him down in my season-long rankings. He's outside my top 12 running backs. I'm probably just not going to play him because I don't think he's healthy. And I know it's the Lions, but Madison has looked good. I think they're going to they're going to use a little bit more of a committee, even with Dalvin Cook back. So that's at least how I'm going to take on it. If I get burned by it, then oh well, I'll just play the big dog and get his points instead. I mean, I hope he doesn't even play. Like, it just makes things way easier. Just play Madison. You can lock him in because he would be a great play against the Lions. And then you have Kamara, who is the other healthy running back that's 8K. So do you like any of these 8K running backs besides Henry? What are your thoughts?
I mean, for Dalvin, I think I speak for everybody playing fantasy football. Just like sit down, man, take like 2-3 weeks, heal the ankle, and then come back a new man and run over the defenses for the rest of the season. I mean, the matchup is so good that if Dalvin plays, and you get him at like 1% rostership, potentially it makes sense. But he's banged up, and it's really hard to play these guys who are dealing with injuries compared to someone like an AJ Brown who is coming off an injury and looks healthy. Like those are two really different situations. But yeah, the Derrick Henry thing is tough because he has a receiving role this year, and he scores like 40 fantasy points against the Jaguars. Like 3 out of every 4 times he faces them. One thing that I was considering doing to kind of differentiate my Derrick Henry lineups was you can pair Derrick Henry with AJ Brown together because they can absolutely smash in the same game. Last year, Derrick Henry put up 200 rushing yards against the Jaguars in week 14, and AJ Brown went for 100 and a touchdown in the same game. So that is definitely one way that you can kind of differentiate your Henry rosters. We haven't really seen players in any of these tournaments really get like 30%, 40% owned. It's really rare. So Henry, I'll be playing him. 9,000 is a lot, but whatever, I'm in.
Jared has been the perennial Derrick Henry fader, and now that he is in on him on Derrick Henry, I mean, yeah. Again, we have a comment coming in here from Rams Dodgers fan talking about cash games. Yes, on Henry. Yeah, no, if you don't play Henry in cash, like you're gonna get buried. You gotta play him. Like he's like just if people don't play him, it's like just take their money. Like just do it. Just take their money. Again, obviously, there's always an argument to be made to fade a player that is super chalky in tournaments. Again, it's a leverage move. But like Jared said, just make other parts of your lineup not chalky. Like there are a lot of different ways you can be unique. And especially because there are a lot of really nice wide receivers on this slate. So I know I talked about these 8K running backs. You don't have to play any of them. You can play up to get, we'll talk about some of these receivers, Devontae Adams, like Justin Jefferson. Like those guys are in like smash spots where you can see them putting up like, Derrick Henry was good last week, but Tyreek Hill scored 50 points. Like, so he was better. So there is probably going to be, unless Derrick Henry does the 40 burger again, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 receivers that outscore him. And those are the guys you want to make sure you land if you don't end up playing Derrick Henry. It's harder to project those guys as opposed to running backs because running back, volume is each year to project on a week-to-week basis. So that's why in cash, you got to go with Henry. But in tournaments, you can obviously go in a different direction. I will say just on Alvin Kamara, the numbers are a little skewed when it comes to his targets or lack thereof targets. So he had like one pass, like throw behind line of scrimmage that he caught that was technically recorded as a carry, but it was like Jameis Winston threw him the ball. So like it was a target. And because if you had like asked Alvin Kamara, like, hey, did you catch any passes today? He would have been like, yeah, like I caught a pass out of the backfield. Like, no, like technically that was a carry, so it doesn't count. So, and then Tony Jones Jr., backup running back for the Saints, is not playing. Like he's hurt. And he had 2 targets in that game. So he was actually playing a role in that game. Dwayne Washington also had a target as well. So I think we see Kamara's targets tick back up. I always like to play good players when they're very low rostered. And unlike Derek or Dalvin Cook, I mean, the matchup is better, but I mean, Kamara is going to be probably low roster too. So I think that if I was going to play either him or Cook, I would probably just play Kamara because I know he's healthy. And I also know he's really, really good at football. So that's all. I'll leave that note on Alvin Kamara. Middle range, there's a lot of running backs here that I like. Barkley and DeAndre Swift kind of stand out to me. DeAndre Swift he didn't deliver last week, but I check out the charts over on pff.com on my DFS cheat sheet. DeAndre Swift is up nearly almost at 20 expected fantasy points per game, which is basically almost that of Christian McCaffrey, and he costs 6,100. So it's just the involvement in the passing game that Swift has is just above and beyond any other running back. He's third. Yeah, he's third in expected fantasy points through 4 weeks. And I like the matchup. So he had a season high snap share last week, 73%. Vikings defense is not good. 31st ranked defense in terms of rushing yards allowed before contact. DeAndre Swift has not been good after contact this year, which is the big issue. But luckily, the Vikings give up a lot of yards before contact. So Jamal Williams is also banged up. I know Swift has kind of been on the injury report all year. Jamal Williams, I think this is like a newer injury. So I think we could see more of Swift in this matchup against the Vikings, which is kind of like one of these other sneaky shootout games. And Barkley just looks like a top 5 running back again. 87% snap share, 25 fantasy points per game, 21 touches per game in the Dallas Giants game that I had talked about earlier when quarterbacks. I think that his targets are going to continue to keep coming his way. He's number 5 in rate of routes run per dropback. And yeah, I still think he's too cheap. I moved him back inside my top. I mean, he's my number 4 ranked running back this week in season long leagues. And he's, we had no problem, at least I had no problem like putting him into the tier of the McCaffreys, the Dalvin Cooks, Kamaras in season long leagues before this whole injury thing kind of like got out of control. So he's so discounted compared to those other guys in a environment that we want to target for DFS. So Barkley and Swift are two like the guys I'm kind of honing in on in that middle tier of running back.
Yeah, I love that Swift call. He's a guy that I wrote up also in my article this week because I love the Vikings on the other side of the ball. They have the highest rated matchup by basically every single tool that we have on
Yes.
DFF.com. So definitely going to be playing a lot of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and running it back on the other side with DeAndre Swift just makes so much sense. He's too cheap. He was a little popular last week, and
I will
did
tell
not play
you,
well.
I will tell you that the Vikings, you're not going to sneak up on anyone with the Vikings double with the Swift ring back. I'm just telling you that right now. Like Ian, that's the one that Ian went with on the PFF Fantasy Pod. So guys, if you do Kirk, Thielen, Jefferson, Swift bring back, make sure you're different somewhere else.
All right, so that'll be the Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk roster.
Yes. Not use Kirk Cousins. Yes, that's the move. I like that.
Yeah, and then other running backs. I also wrote up Damien Harris, who I don't feel as great about now that apparently the Patriots' entire offensive line is injured.
Yeah, no, this is something to talk about because he was very low rostered when I was writing him up as well. It was actually him and Damian Williams. I was like, oh, the two Damians, like people are fading Damian. Like what's going on? But look, you can't go into Harris because even if he's low rostered, this guy doesn't have a role in the passing game. So he already has kind of like a hindered ceiling in that way. And so you need the matchup. You need him to be efficient on the ground. And that is now no longer a guarantee based on the fact that their offensive line is not in a good spot. And it's actually surprising. If you go to PFF.com premium stats, the teams tab, you look at PFF run blocking grade. Jared, if you had to guess, Patriots run blocking grade these past 4 weeks, what do you think it is? In terms of 1 to 32.
Because you're bringing it up, so in this context, I'm going to guess it's pretty bad.
It's 5th worst. Okay. It's actually worse than the Steelers. And that's with them being healthy. So this is a bad spot for Harris. Again, I think in like season-long leagues, I think he's still like a back-end RB2. I mean, I had him as like an RB14. I was like, let's go. Like, I'm ready. Like 2 bad weeks back-to-back, but this is the spot. Like now he's really more of a back end, RB24, which you're not going to want to play in DFS. And like, if he burns, like, what is he going to do? 100. Okay. Like hopefully he gets 100 rushing yards and scores a touchdown. Like, but he's not really going to catch that many passes. I know he ran a lot of routes last week, but Brandon Bolden was still playing on 3rd down. Ramondre Stevenson could be active in this game. We could see a little bit more of him now that JJ Taylor is now in the Belichick doghouse. So, by virtue of conservation of doghouses, you have to move out one player to get the other one in. So Stevenson should now be out of the doghouse, and maybe they lean on him a little bit more. I don't know. This is going to be a weird game plan the Patriots are going to have to use maybe they try to just spread him out and throw the ball a lot. Texas can obviously be beat through the air as well. But yeah, I think they're going to have issues trying to run the football. So I'm sorry, Jared, but Damien Harris is, yeah.
No, we got to react to information as it
sucks, dude, because my lock of the week, was like over 59.5 rushing yards for Damien Harris. I'm just like, you know what? Gonna hedge, gonna take the under on his 71-yard rushing. So I'm like hoping we really like that sweet spot, middle. Like 65 rushing yards. I'm like, boom, like that's what I want from Damian Harris.
Yeah, and then also in the 5K range, I brought up Herbert earlier, but in that game, Kareem Hunt has been playing so well this year, and at 5,800, he's just cheap. Like getting running back fantasy points this year has not been easy. So I like Kareem Hunt in as someone who can kind of play in basically any game script. If the Browns are kind of in a shootout, he can be catching passes. If the Browns are playing with a lead, they get both Chubb and Hunt involved on the ground. So I like Kareem Hunt also this week as a play.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Kareem Hunt's not much more. What is he at? 5,900, you said, or 5,800?
Yeah, 58.
Yeah, so
cheap.
I mean, look, there are a lot of really great values. You can find the money to move up from Damian Harris to get up to Kareem Hunt. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Leonard Fournette again is worth a mention here as well. I know that he's coming in pretty popular, and if he stays really popular, I wouldn't fade him in cash. I think that he's still a fine play there. I mean, the Miami Dolphins defense is pretty bad against the run. We saw Jonathan Taylor have a really big game against them, but we now have a reason why he could potentially lose out on work is if Giovanni Bernard is back. So we're going to see him potentially lose out on snaps on third down, which is going to hinder his ceiling as a pass catcher. And look, it's funny because anytime we think we know this backfield, it's like just blows up in our face. It's like, ugh. So
would you play Ronald Jones?
No, I'm not playing him. No, there's no way. I mean, it's just gonna be ugly all the way. That's why I just like Brady. It's like I want the passing game. Like that's why I want Brady in the pass catch, because I think this is a good right split. Like Brady wants to throw 1 million touchdowns this year. He still wants to break all of these records, and I think Miami gives him a good opportunity to do so. I don't think Miami has enough. I mean, both their cornerbacks have been on the injury report this week. Cringe Wizard says I'd rather use Hunt than Chubb, or both. Yeah, I agree. I'm trying
with your cringe.
Right with your cringe. I'm trying to see if there's any other running backs that I have kind of talked about. Aaron Jones. What do you think about Aaron Jones against the Bengals? I know his usage was kind of weird last week because AJ Dillon played a lot. A lot of it was also in the fourth quarter. And Aaron Jones, it's really hard to, because we know he has these 40-point games in him. And it's just all right, trying to pinpoint the spot, where it happens. Because he's had one big game earlier this year against the Lions. Other games have been kind of so-so. I mean, you're the Packers. Is this an Aaron Jones game, or is this a Devontae Adams game? And that's really who we need to talk about as we get into wide receivers.
I mean, from a DFS strategy standpoint, Aaron Jones is a fantastic play this week. The Packers are favorites. They're road favorites, but they're favorites nonetheless. Devontae Adams is the highest projected rostered wide receiver. And if Aaron Jones has an awesome game, then he's destroying every Devontae Adams roster. So just from a game theory perspective, Aaron Jones is an awesome play. There's going to be nothing in this matchup that suggests for you to play him other than James Robinson had an awesome game against the Bengals last Thursday. So I definitely support Aaron Jones in tournaments. He's definitely worth sprinkling in lineups.
I want to hit on this Cardinals backfield. I think this is important. James Conner could be the guy in this backfield. I mean, I like Chase Edmonds a lot. Yeah, he was someone I wanted to kind of tout, quote unquote, but now he's injured or he's banged up. He's questionable. I think that I'll still probably play him and roster him in builds, even not knowing if he's going to play or not, because I know that, okay, I can always pivot. It is a late game. You can pivot to James Conner. So how would you feel do you think James Conner is going to be popular? Do you think people are going to wait around for the news about Chase Edmonds? I mean, maybe we'll get a Schefter bomb about, Edmonds is going to play. He's going to be limited. He's going to be out, before lineups lock. Or do you think, hey, give yourself an out, make a lineup with James Conner, even with not knowing about Chase Edmonds? Because, I mean, James Conner could be in a smash spot. He scored 4 touchdowns over the past 2 weeks while operating alongside Chase Edmonds. And if he's gone, he won't take over all the pass catching work, because I think we'll see a little bit more of Rondale Moore. But I mean, that's a really good spot for James Conner, especially if he's not high roster because of the ambiguity around Edmonds' injury.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, nobody is going to be falling over themselves to play James Conner, even though he did score a bunch of touchdowns. So I don't think people take advantage of the late swap enough. And there's a lot of good running backs in the 5K range. So if you put Conner in as your kind of
what is Conner at his price?
So he's 5,600.
Oh yeah. So yeah, there are ways you can move around.
So just put him in your lineup as a placeholder, and then if Edmonds ends up playing, then you can swap to Tony Pollard or Damian Williams or Kareem Hunt. There's plenty of other options in the later games. So
Yeah.
like for strategy wise, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you could even then straight up like Edmonds is just a little more expensive than Connor anyway. So don't avoid the Cardinals running backs because we're not sure the injuries. Like this is a really good matchup for them. The Cardinals are favorites. You could see Trey Lance implode and just the Cardinals just run away with this game. So yeah, you want to have a piece of these running backs. Oh man, I just hope Edmonds plays, man. 395 scoreless offensive yards for him.
He's due.
He's so due for a huge. This is the game. Like it's got to be the game where he's all banged up and like, oh, like Edmonds, like what's going on? Like, so I could see him having a big game here. All right, that's really it for running backs. I guess the only other guys I want to mention, Kenneth Gainwell is kind of like my like long shot to be, this week's Cordero Patterson. I'm just looking at the similarities between the players. It's a running back that's only used really in the passing game for their offense. He's a really high target rate per route run. That's something that stood out about Cordero Patterson. I actually wrote up Cordero Patterson, a DFS cheat sheet last week. Of course, I didn't take my own advice. Classic me. But Kenneth Gainwell, same price as Patterson was last week, $4,900. Opens up a lot of doors at other positions. Not going to be rostered heavily because of the fact that he's not a quote-unquote starter. But if you look at the touches, I mean, he's right there with Miles Sanders in terms of touches. And all he's basically seeing is receiving work. And it's a good spot with the Eagles playing the Carolina Panthers, which is one of the other high-paced games that's on this slate. Any interest in Bengals, guys, with Mixon? I don't think Mixon's going to play. That's what we talked about in the injury pod. Pirine and Chris Evans are both 4K. I'm not sure why they didn't move up Pirine at all. They're both 4K. I kind of like this game. Do you want to play either of these guys? And does it depend on roster? I kind of made it on rostership. I was like, if Pirine is popular, then I probably would not want to play him. But if he's not a very popular player, I think that I would want to get some exposure to him as the lead back on an offense I kind of am excited about.
Is he going to be popular? Really?
I don't know. I mean, if Mixon is out, like he's the starting running back. I know that we got the report they're going to use a committee, but we kind of know. We know he's going to be on first and second downs, and I mean he's already been playing on third down this year, and Chris Evans will work in here and there. But I mean, he's 4K. Like he's the cheapest running. I mean, Damian Williams is 5,800, and Samaje Perine is not in a dissimilar situation, I would say, and they didn't get him priced up. So I don't know. I mean, if he's not popular, I think I would dabble.
Yeah, I mean, 4K for a starting running back, I'm on board.
on a good offense, like I want to play like Burrow, and it's like you just kind of add him to the mix, and he's cheap, and he lets you kind of get other things going. So
yeah, it's also good like leverage because the Bengals receivers are going to be really popular, like Higgins and Chase. Everybody's going to want to get them into lineups, and then if Pirine randomly is the one who scores 2 touchdowns, well then all the Chase and Higgins rosters are screwed, and you're sitting pretty with your 4K 2 touchdown running back.
Yeah. So yeah, I just know it's going to be like Chris Evans is going to catch like an 80-yard wheel route. I can already see it happening, dude. Like taking a screen to the house. So Chris Evans would be my million maker play with Joe Burrow. Just throw him in.
I support it.
On to wide receivers, we have Devontae Adams, 34% target share. I rewatched that game, Jared, and the audacity of Randall Cobb to basically knock down a Devontae Adams touchdown, tilting people's faces off. Randall Cobb, what the hell, man? This is just the blow-up game for Adams, right?
I mean, it's coming. It's going to happen at some point, for sure.
Yeah, I think that he's the pay-up guy. I think that he's kind of like the Tyreek. Look, and again, Tyreek Hill was popular last week too, but that doesn't mean everybody actually plays them. And not everyone will play Devontae Adams. And if I'm making a tournament lineup, I think Devontae Adams is the first guy I'm putting in. I think that's kind of how I feel about it. I think this is the week for him. And so same goes for Justin Jefferson. His target share is pretty even with Thielen throughout the beginning of the year, but Jefferson's been dominating the air yards. And again, both if you check out PFF's wide receiver quarterback matchup chart, number 1, I think it's Justin Jefferson. Number 2, it's Devontae Adams. So both guys are in good spots. Mike Williams, I think actually you mentioned him. He's highly priced because of the adjustment did not affect him from the Monday night game. But he's still 6th in fantasy points per game. And I think the recency bias about him sucking on that Island game is going to have more people playing Keenan Allen. And Keenan Allen makes more sense to play. Like he's a higher target share, 26% versus 21%. Allen makes more sense to play in like a cash format because of the PPR aspect of his game. But Mike Williams was one Justin Herbert an accurate throw away from scoring like an 80-yard touchdown. And we wouldn't even be like talking about, oh, like, is Mike Williams a fake now? Like that wouldn't be even a conversation. It would be, oh my God, like Mike Williams is continue to play this guy because all he does is produce. So I know you mentioned Mike Williams as a play in that Chargers-Browns game. I like him as well as some of these higher priced wide receivers. And I mentioned Deebo Samuel when we talked about Trey Lance, but I think he's going to be very popular. And I think if your lineup is cooking, he makes a lot of sense. Again, another guy with 30% plus target share. Guys, it sounds, pretty easy, but if you want to chase targets, like every single week, the guys at the top of the scoring are all guys that have like 25% target shares or more. Like we know who's going to get the targets. So continue to chase those guys. Again, receivers are more volatile, but you don't always have to galaxy brain it and look for those guys. Like, all right, it's going to be this week for Robbie Anderson. It's like, well, it hasn't been it all throughout the season, so it's probably not going to happen still. It's probably still the DJ Moore show. So again, keep that in mind. Look at guys with high target shares. Those are guys you want to target, especially even in the higher tiers of players. Jared, high tier receivers, did I take all of your guys, or is there someone that you like to pay up for?
So the only ones that you didn't mention were the Panthers and the Cowboys receivers. So DJ Moore and then Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. I think all three of those guys are going to be pretty popular this week. They all have great matchups and rightfully so. I think of that group, DJ Moore is probably the one that I'd prioritize. The Eagles defense is just like perpetually terrible. I mean, Tyreek Hill,
Yep.
You saw what Tyreek Hill did in this matchup last week. And I think that people might have sticker shock at DJ Moore's price tag in the same way that they did, or that they will on Mike Williams at 7,500. Like, because DJ Moore's probably never been that expensive on DraftKings. So hopefully you can get him at a little bit lower rostership because I think, he's a top 5 or 8 wide receiver the rest of the way easily. So DJ Moore is definitely a guy that I'm going to be keying on this week. And then, of course, AJ Brown, wide receiver 1 season, got to be playing him in this matchup. The Jaguars stink, and AJ Brown is just the best wide receiver in the NFL. So
he is at, what is his price? Is he 64?
6,500, yeah.
6,500. Okay, yeah, I'm in there like swimwear with AJ Brown. I think that he's just not going to have as high rostership as he would because of Derrick Henry. We see it all the time. Like the running backs, whatever the chalky running backs are, the receivers attached to them are just never as popular just because people the mindset is, oh, well, I'm already playing a tight end. Like if I play Derrick Henry, then I don't want to play AJ Brown with him. But like you pointed out, that's not necessarily what you want to do. You actually kind of want to embrace that type of, mentality. You want to embrace AJ Brown. I mean, you don't have to tell me twice to play AJ Brown. So,
yep. And then my correlation play from that game is Marvin Jones on the other side.
Not
Marvin Jones.
Not Tavon Austin.
No, not Tavon Austin. I would not be caught dead playing Tavon Austin in DFS. I'm sorry. But the Titans secondary, I was looking at their deep coverage stats. They are dead last in completions allowed. They've allowed the most, 12. The most yards, 481. The most yards per attempt at 24.1, and the most touchdowns at 4. And Marvin Jones is going to be the Jaguars' deep threat. DJ Chark is out, so that's more extra targets. So
wait, but Laviska Shenault, his ADOT like tripled in that game without Chark in it though.
Yeah, but there was like one busted play where he just like randomly got behind the defense. So I don't know how much I'm buying into that. I mean, you could definitely play Laviska too, but Marvin is going to be my guy, I think.
Yeah, I like those. That kind of brings us into the middle tier, like between 6 and 5K. So something I noticed about this tier as I was doing my research for this upcoming slate was, every single week I look back at the DFS cheat sheet and kind of see, okay, where did I miss on guys? And I noticed that there was like a lot of misses in this particular tier. Not to say that every player, priced between 6 and 5K is going to bust or whatever, but it's not necessarily like the tier of receiver you want to like have 4 guys in. Like, I think it's better to have 1 or 2 that you really like, not necessarily build around middle tier, because there's a reason why they're middle tier. Like, they're fringier based on their roles. They're not necessarily like complete alphas in their offenses. You're chasing something about their profile, and they're also not complete punt plays where you kind of know, okay, like this guy's sub 5K, like I kind of know what I'm getting into. Whereas these guys you feel a little bit better about, but not necessarily they're locked and loaded to go. So just kind of something to keep in mind while you're doing just general roster construction, because that's a big part of DFS. It's like we talk about obviously the players that we like, but it's, ultimately comes down to putting together the best lineup that kind of complements each other across the board. So just kind of something I took away from looking at some of the past write-ups I have done. So Marvin Jones was definitely one of the guys I listed here. The other guys I listed out were Jacoby Myers, Henry Ruggs, Courtland Sutton. Was Courtland Sutton before he friggin' rolled his ankle, and just so pissed about it because he looked so good this week. Like Teddy Bridgewater was coming back, and I was like, dude, this is a great spot, and now he's hurt, and it just sucks. Yeah, also just like going after low roster guys that are hurt. Again, we talked about with Dalvin Cook. It's like just play a low roster guy that's not hurt. Like you can get low roster guys that are good plays that aren't hurt. So unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be playing as much. Hopefully we get more information about Sutton. Maybe he's okay, but it's just something not ideal for him. The plays actually, as we'll get into tight ends, it's probably Noah Fant actually. Like he's going to see boatload of targets. And I think that, I didn't even think of him initially. I was like, oh, Tim Patrick season, let's go. Of course. But maybe that's what the public will do as well and think that's Tim Patrick season when it's really just play Noah Fant. But Ruggs, Courtland Sutton, Devontae Parker also has a hamstring shoulder injury. Antonio Brown and T. Higgins. Those guys kind of round out my middle tier targets. I mean, Higgins, I think, is good in cash and in GPPs. He's 5K, 28% target share. And Jared, like you pointed out, like he's not injured anymore. Like he was hurt and now he's healthy, which is different from a guy entering the game like questionable. I think it's very important to parse between those two different situations. And Higgins had a 28% target share when he was the guy weeks 1 through 2. There is no Jair Alexander. Jared, I know you don't need to talk about Kevin King and how great that he is. Eric Stokes is okay. I know he's graded pretty well for us. I know that he was giving up a lot of cushion to Deontay Johnson. I mean, dude, Deontay Johnson's routes are just fun to watch, man. He just literally just runs he runs 5 yards downfield, just turns around and just throws the ball. It's fun to watch. Ruggs is like weird. Dude, Ruggs is more expensive than Allen Robinson. Isn't that crazy?
That was who I was going to bring up next, Allen Robinson. I was trying to get you or Ian or anybody to say something good about him, and that was a fail, which I think he could have a Robert Woods type redemption game coming up against the Raiders.
All right.
I don't know.
No. Why do you think that? Just bring me the knowledge and I'll have a rebuttal. I already queued up.
Okay. So Allen Robinson has had terrible quarterback play his entire career, right? That is nothing. Yes. That is nothing new for him.
Correct.
The Bears offense is running fewer plays than normal. They're running the ball a lot.
Correct.
But so we have Justin Fields now starting, who has another week at practice, knowing he's the starting quarterback. So they're drawing up and designing plays for him. Allen Robinson was out-targeted last week by Darnell Mooney. Surely this coaching staff knows that Allen Robinson is their best player. Similarly, that McVay is like, all right, we got to get Robert Woods more involved.
Right, but Sean McVay told us that. Like Matt Nagy did not say, hey, we got to get more opportunities for Allen Robinson. He did not say that.
This is true. And I know that assuming rational coaching is especially in Chicago, never a good thing to do. But he's just too good to keep being this bad in fantasy. And the matchup is awesome. The Raiders secondary is not very good. Michael Williams, like you said earlier, should have had a 80-yard touchdown when I believe it was Damon Arnett just like fell all over himself. What's going to happen? What's going to happen when Allen Robinson is in one-on-one coverage with Damon Arnett? It's not gonna end well for.
Well, Justin Fields is gonna either run or throw the ball to Darnell Mooney, who is the actual alpha on the Chicago Bears. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned Mooney had more targets than Allen Robinson. I mean, Mooney's had more targets than Allen Robinson in the last 2 games. So with the new quarterback, Fields has been targeting Mooney. They're on the year, their target share is the same. So even that's including the 11 target game that he had with Andy Dalton. It's under quarterback. And that's just the thing. Like, I just haven't seen it with Fields to buy back into, what Allen Robinson has had. Yes, bad quarterbacks, but he's had statue quarterbacks for the most part, like guys that weren't really mobile. I mean, Trubisky was mobile to an extent, but Trubisky was never someone that would go through his reads and necessarily look through other options. He would always kind of go towards Allen Robinson. So, yeah, I mean, I get the price. I just think that even though Woods bounced back, I mean, Woods plays in a high-powered offense. Like, you had the squeaky wheel gets the wheel and gets the grease narrative. Like, in the matchup, I think the matchup was better. I mean, I looked at the Raiders' defense, and, I mean, they're actually pretty good against deep balls. And they also have a nasty pass rush. So, I'm afraid that we could see this game go more like Cleveland. I mean, last week they played, Allen Robinson played the freaking Lions last week and did nothing against the Lions. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely understand and get it. And he is very low roster, but I think there's actually another guy at his same price that I was like, oh no, I'll just play him instead at 55. See if you can guess who it is.
At 55 for receivers?
Yeah, receiver. I think there was another guy.
Myers?
No, I don't think it was him. Is there another guy? I thought there was another guy.
Boyd, Higgins, Antonio Brown.
Oh, it was probably Antonio Brown.
Yeah, they're all in that.
I'd rather just play him. No, I think there's another.
Yeah, it's a tough range. Marvin Jones is like by far my favorite one from like a strategy and roster construction safety upside perspective. But
all right, is there any other? I'm trying to see if there's any other receivers that I had. Yeah, Ruggs had a ton of air yards last week. So, again, that's kind of why he's in play. The Bears have been just terrible against deep passes. They're ranked 31st in explosive pass play rate allowed. Again, this is coming from someone that like did not want anything to do with Ruggs during best ball season or whatever. And I'm admitting like, hey, like this is a good spot for him. He's played much better the last couple of weeks. I mean, week 1 was atrocious. Like the dude looked like he had no idea what was going on, but his routes rate per dropback increased. So like he's starting to play more, 21% target share, 183 air yards last week, which is the 4th highest, and his 54% air yard share. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And Sutton would have been a smash spot as well, but he's dealing with the injury. So not as interested in him. Chenault mentioned 29% target share without DJ Chark last week. He's cheap at 4,800 or 4,900. Again, I think he's already really good in cash games because the Titans defense just sucks in general. They've given up the highest or 31st ranked in terms of passer rating to the slot. Laviska has run 82% of his routes on the slot this year. So I like him. And I would say some of my like punt plays, Deontay Harris for the New Orleans Saints. I like him. He leads the Saints in target share this year. And the football team sucks. The football team has been so bad against wide receivers this year. Second most fantasy points allowed, and per PFS wide receiver cornerback matchup chart. It's so funny because you got like Devontae Adams, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and then number 5 is Deontay Harris kind of coming, just like sneaking in his way to the wide receiver cornerback matchup chart as a top advantage. So, and the thing that's cool with Deontay Harris is he returns kicks, returns punts. So you can do a little double dip with the New Orleans Saints DST. Boom, you are cooking with an interesting play with Deontay Harris, who is from my home city. So shout out to him. And I don't know why he has not been suspended yet. I thought that he was like facing a 2-game suspension. That's like why I got off of him in best ball like the end of the year. And then he still has not been suspended yet. So Deontay Harris is kind of like my wild card play. And then same thing goes for the Cardinals wide receivers, especially if there's no Chase Edmonds. I think that means we see more because Edmonds is so involved in the passing game that I think that we see an expanded role for Rondale Moore, Christian Kirk, like guys, like I get they're all like sub 5% because we don't know when they're going to blow up, but every single week, one of these guys blows up. And if I have to, if I'm fading the most popular one and his name is AJ Green, then I will do that all day of the week. It's like, you don't need to convince me twice to like, oh, like you're not going to play AJ Green, man. Like, no, I'll play Kirk and Rondale Moore because they're both low roster, but we've already seen them both blow up. It's just which week is it going to be? So I think that those guys make a lot of sense.
Yep. I agree about the Cardinals. Some other ones that stuck out to me were Kadarius Toney. He had 9 targets last week. Shepard and Slayton are out, and it's a matchup against the high-powered Cowboys offense. KJ Osborne is interesting. He's kind of leveraged off of popular Thielen and Jefferson, and he's really cheap. And just great matchup against the Lions. So you could go there also. These cheap receivers are so tough. They look just terrible. But the salary savings that they give you to pay up for guys like Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams makes it worth thinking about when you're building your rosters for sure.
Yeah, dude, I'm glad you brought up KJ Osborne. It was one of the guys I wrote up as well. He benefits from the same matchup as the other two guys. We've already seen him pop, so this isn't, a player that you're just kind of like, oh, I hope he has a good game. Like, we've already seen him have like two really great games already this year. Like, it's not like crazy to think that he has another boom game because he's already done it. Kirk Cousins has already shown that he has chemistry with him, and he plays the slot role. And the Lions have allowed the highest passer rating to slot wide receivers this year. Like, he is their slot receiver. So I love KJ Osborne as a way to get off of Thielen and Jefferson, or play them with one of those guys. Like, I'm telling you, dude, like Kirk Cousins, Thielen, Jefferson, DeAndre Swift bring back is going to be like super popular. So throwing in Osborne instead of Jefferson or Thielen is just boom. And now you're different. And I think that it would not surprise me at all to see him match either of those guys in production or outproduce one of them, because again, variance, things happen, and we're not always right about everything that we project. As hard as we are as workers, I also like to call him Kadarius Toney, dude. He was like, I remember just during the draft when people wrote about him as like being the human joystick, and that one play where he like forced like 5 missed tackles. Dude, he was like breaking ankles all over the place. It's like, hey, if they just get this guy a bunch of screens, like he's gonna pop one. And Dallas, the matchup, who's gonna be on? Who's gonna cover Kenny Golladay? Trevon Diggs. What does that mean? Daniel Jones will probably throw it to the other guy, which, aside from DJ Moore, who obviously had a massive game against the Panthers or against the Cowboys, I mean, Robbie Anderson still got the targets. Like, he still got 11 targets. So chasing after the number 2 receiver against Dallas has kind of proven to be a good process. So I think not even just buying into Kadarius Toney's workload last week, I think the matchup as the number 2 receiver for the Giants makes a lot of sense, with Diggs most likely locking up Kenny Golladay. So Toney is good. Tight ends. There's no George Kittle. Are you going to play Ross Dwelly, Jared?
No.
Or Ricky? The correct answer is Ricky Seals-Jones. Number 1 is he's
routes run, baby. Routes run.
2,500 routes run has yet to let us fail. It led us to Dawson Knox. It led me to playing CJ Uzoma in Showdown. I won like $20. I was pumped. So yes, routes run. Ricky Seals-Jones ran a route on 81% of Taylor Heineke's dropbacks in week 4. That's elite usage for a tight end. Ricky Seals-Jones is also not a tight end that is a guy that like catches the ball and falls down in like the Jack Doyle archetype. He's a former wide receiver. So if he catches a pass like on a broken play, like he can actually has the speed to like run in for like an 80-yard touchdown, which you will never find ever a tight end with that kind of upside at 2,500. And that's why Will Dissly did not work out as well as I hoped would last week, because he is more in the Jack Doyle tier of tight end. He was also 2,600, so that didn't work out. But Ricky Seals-Jones, I think, makes the most sense. I guess the question is, because paying down is easy, so you could just pay down on Ricky Seals-Jones. Do you pay up for Darren Waller? Because we're kind of losing these top-tier tight ends. There's no Kelsey. There's no Kittle. So you have Hawkinson and Waller as like the top 2 guys that you could, and then Noah Fant, like I mentioned as well, with like less target competition for the Broncos tight end.
Yeah, Waller's a tough one for me. I mean, it's kind of just a gross game environment. I know he can get, 15 targets in any matchup, kind of unpredictably. But I think he's just going to be highly rostered because people are going to have money or salary left and not know what to do with it. And it's like, oh, well, I'll just pay up for Darren Waller because he's kind of the only guy in that price range that's viable. So I think he'll be more popular than he should be. So I'd rather just pay down at tight end. You listed a bunch of great options. We also have Tyler Conklin in that same Lions-Vikings game. He's got a good matchup. I was looking at the routes run for the Bucs tight ends, and Brate was the guy. He like doubled OJ Howard in routes run. So Cameron Brate is interesting. The Ferk Daddy unfortunately let us down last week, but but he was running routes. Dan Arnold also, he seemed like he was really involved. He's interesting if you're stacking up the Titans and the Jaguars game. There's just so many like really
there's good value tight ends.
Yeah, it's like kind of wasteful for me to spend money. TJ Hawkinson, maybe you could convince me to do it if I'm stacking up the Vikings Lions game, but I think I'd rather just pay down. That's the way to go.
Yeah, I really think you're being contrarian if you pay up for Waller. And again, if he's just the most popular tight end, then it's like you're not even doing it to be different anymore at that point. So especially if Waller shakes out, if he's the highest rostered tight end, then
he will be.
Yeah. So then, it's probably best to just fade him and just pay down for one of these. There's a ton of value tight ends, and using value tight ends also just in corporation with your game stack just makes so much sense to do. So because you're just looking for touchdown equity. So if your guy throws a touchdown, you just roster, if you play Ryan Tannehill, you just roster Ferkser. If you play, Trevor Lawrence, you just play Dan Arnold. Like you just play the tight end that you have. I like Tom Brady. So I just jam in Cameron Brate, and it makes things kind of easy that they score a touchdown. Boom, I have the correlation. I'm good to go. You play Mike Gesicki as a bring back if you make a Tom Brady lineup. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Gesicki's been really good the last couple of weeks. I will say it's been a lot of garbage time. Like he did not have a target until the fourth quarter of last week's game. And I was like kind of blown back. I was like, wow, like I'm kind of glad that I kind of know that now. Like I actually moved him down a little bit in my season long rankings because I was convinced that like, oh my God, like Gesicki's just been like blowing up. Like, why are we not talking about him more? It's like, it's very, very smelly production that he's had over the past couple of weeks. And as I've learned over the years, that tends to run out sooner rather than later. So don't be so gung-ho on Mike Gesicki. Do not play him. I would not play him alone. He's in that middle tier where it's like, oh, like I got the upside. It's like, no, like I think that he's pretty fringy. Like I really think only one of these Dolphins is going to pan out, and it sucks because I'm gonna have to try to figure out which one it is between Waddle, Parker, and Gesicki. Gesicki's the cheapest because he's a tight end, but I mean he doesn't really play tight end. He barely lines up in line anyway. So just keep that in mind. Don't go all in on Gesicki. Really, I think keep him to game stacks with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Waddle is a good option, and Parker are both good options. Conklin's probably my favorite in that 3K range, 3.5K. Lions have been terrible against tight ends this year. Cameron Brate. And then the Patriots tight ends. The matchup is really, really good there. Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith are both cheap. Henry's running way ahead of Jonnu Smith in terms of like routes run, but Jonnu Smith is being targeted like at a sane clip when he's playing. So I'm going to try to do more digging into like what the Patriots are going to do in this matchup with like out an offensive line and try to figure out and see how they're going to, because they know that like the Texans are bad on defense everywhere. So the Patriots should be able to like dictate how they operate, but based on their offensive line woes, I would be like, well, I mean, are they going to run the ball? I mean, they're not going to probably want to go deep. They're probably not going to want, it's probably the quick game stuff. So Jacoby Myers, Jacoby Myers have 15 catches for like 80 yards.
Yeah, that game is going to be so brutal.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you're not stacking that game because it's like I mean, even okay, we'll talk about defenses. But that's kind of all the tight ends I talked about. Ricky Seals-Jones again is my guy. Just to bring it back home, 2 end zone targets last week as well for Ricky Seals-Jones. 2 end zone targets. So it's really the classic case of he's perfect. He's the perfect tight end. Any other tight ends that you that stood out to you?
Jared Cook had like a 75% rut rate. Again, I've talked a number of times here how I like the Chargers and the Browns game. He popped for a monster game. Nobody's going to play him because it's Jared Cook. So, and he's cheap. And then Max Williams is interesting.
He's hurt.
He's hurt.
He is questionable for week 5.
All right. Well, if he ends up playing, he's interesting. He's same thing, just running a lot of routes.
Cool. All right, let's go into DSTs. And I mean, look, I think that so the football team is going to be very, very popular. 2,300. It's kind of like it's like a Lions-esque move from last week, but like we know the football team is like good. Like we know they have the pieces to be good on defense, whereas like the Lions, like we know why they're bad because they don't have the personnel. But the football team still has a very high pass rush grade. We know they still have those fierce guys, Chase Young, Montez Sweat. Like we know they can rush the passer. PFF's second highest graded pass rush unit. So I think that they can get all over Jameis Winston potentially in this matchup. So I think that cash games should pay down for them. But because they're not the most popular, at least it looked like the Raiders were coming in as the most popular defense at 2,900. And I think that's the lesson people need to take away is that you really don't want to play, especially if it's a bad defense like the Lions were last week. You don't want to pay the most popular defense that's really not good in real life in tournaments because it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think of the cheap defenses, the one that stuck out to me actually was the Texans.
Yeah, Texans now, yeah.
Especially with all the Patriots offensive line injuries. You have a rookie quarterback on the road.
Yeah, it's pretty much split. It's 23. So it's Washington football team 2,300, Texans 2,300, both at football teams 8.5%, Texans at 8.2%.
Oh, the Texans are popular?
Dude, everyone knows about the offensive line issues.
God damn. But it's the Texans.
It doesn't matter, dude. Dude, you picked up the Jets defense because they're playing that.
I did add I'm starting the Jets defense in redraft fantasy football leagues this week. Let's go.
Yeah, no, they're both the same. So I guess if it's split down the middle, then I think you can really kind of go with either because neither of them will be the ultimate. I mean, it's still the Raiders are the most popular coming in at 10%, but
what about the Cardinals? Where are they at?
I think Cardinals were cheaper. They're at 6. They're one of the ones that kind of stood out to me as like a potential, as the tournament one that I would use because it's just a little bit less rostership. And I like the matchup against Lance, especially no Kittle. He can, I mean, look, dude, like he looked like when he was taking snaps, he was like using one hand to like take the ball back. I'm like, dude, like you need to like be more secure with the football, especially if they're playing a negative game script and he's just kind of like kind of playing more YOLO ball. If they're trying to catch up, then I could see him throwing a couple picks, taking sacks. He holds on to the ball for a while. So I like the Cardinals call there.
Yep. Chargers also. Baker Mayfield's hurt and he looks terrible. And they have a talented defense. What are you thinking about the expensive ones? Could you see yourself paying $4K for a defense this week or like?
Dude, I saw the guy who won the play action paid up for the Bills. So like you can do it and win a tournament. Again, you're not doing it in cash because it's not optimal to pay up for defense because all their ceilings are the same. Everyone has the same ceiling. Anyone could return a kickoff return for a touchdown. Anyone could fumble return for a touchdown. But the fact that the Patriots are just missing so many offensive linemen make me not want to pay out for them. Especially like the recency bias with how great the Bills were. I mean, first of all, the Bills have like the best defense in the NFL, like number one. Like I guess their DVOA against the Texans in that game was like the best of all time. And like one game is like the most, like the biggest beatdown by a defense, like analytically speaking, like ever. So don't
Davis Mills is so bad. The last 2 weeks, the Texans are averaging 3.2 yards per play. That is so anemic. Yes. It's a full yard lower than the second worst team, which is the Chicago Bears.
They are not good. But look, it's rule of thumb, man. Like I've never been one to pay up all the way for DSTs. Again, the Patriots, are they going to probably score like 10 points? Probably. But what are they at? Like
they need multiple touchdowns.
They're like, aren't they like almost like 5K?
Yeah, they're 4,900. You legitimately need them to score 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, you can't pay up for that. It's just, look, you're chasing, like last week was the week to do it with the Bills. If you didn't do it last week, boo-hoo, you got to move on. Like I would not pay up. I mean, look, I'm not paying over 3K for a defense. It's not what I'm doing. I'm playing either Cardinals. I like the Cowboys against Daniel Jones. They're not super, super popular. I think the Cowboys have like kind of like a real life, Cowboys are 5%. Like I like that move. And I think the one I actually found that's like cheaper than Texans. Oh no, not even the Eagles is interesting too at 2,200. That's at 6%. So I guess there's not really any defenses, at least to me, that are like sub 5 that I really, really like. I guess I'll probably eating some chalk on DST. Are there any ones that you're kind of that stand up to you at all?
No, I've been paying down like sub 3K is probably what I'll end up doing. None of those 3K defenses stand out to me. Panthers against Jalen Hurts, but it's like you want to play your defense against like statue quarterbacks so they can get sacks.
Yeah, no, totally get it. All right, well, we're an hour in. This was good. I think we kind of hit on everything I wanted to hit on. I like coming on here, Jared, and we talk about plays, and now I know, like, all right, Henry Ruggs is good, like KJ Osborne is good. Like when we agree on stuff just before, like we do our own research, and then we come together and we agree on something. It's like, all right, that's the affirmation I needed. Just like when people ask me start-sit questions, it's like, hey, I know you already know who you want to start. You just want me to like support you in your efforts to start this player. So,
oh my God.
Final takeaways, your stack of the week, I guess we'll do. I know last week you did the Cardinals and they let you down.
Yeah, they did leave me down, except for Chase Edmonds. He had a good game, but
he just didn't score any touchdowns.
He didn't score any touchdowns. Stack of the week. I think Can I cheat and do 2? Because I want
Sure.
I want the.
I'm gonna
I
play
want
them
the
both. I'm
Titans
gonna play them
stack.
both. So I'm gonna play them both. Whatever.
So number 1, I want a Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, and Marvin Jones stack, and then I want the Vikings Lions stack of Justin Jefferson and DeAndre Swift. So I'm cheating a little bit, but those are the 2 stacks.
All right. I'm gonna go with my guy TB12 in Tampa Bay. I'm gonna go Tom Brady, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and bring it back with a Miami Dolphins player. I'm still not sure who I want to bring back with. I'm thinking about, Gesicki was kind of what I was honing in, but like after I watched that game, I was like, dude, like
Waddle, man, like that Bucs pass rush, they're gonna try to get the ball.
I was like, I think last week was so heightened by Parker and Gesicki's like production in the fourth quarter that I was like, you know what, like entering last week, it was it was Waddle. Like Waddle was the guy. They just got rid of Mike Gesicki, or not. They just got rid of Jakeem Grant. So like Waddle's now returning punts. Like I think they're just like all in on be like, yo, like this is our first round pick. Like we wanted to get him as many touches as possible. So and Waddle's cheaper. Like Waddle's cheaper than Parker, which doesn't really make a ton of sense. I think he's only 49, right?
Oh my God. I'm just looking at these ownership projections that just updated, and Leonard Fournette is the second highest owned player on the slate.
Okay,
Oh
Lenny.
My God.
Okay, yeah, like that's
Chalk Lenny week. Let's go.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like people just aren't paying attention to Bernard's gonna play, and that sucks for Fournette. So yeah, I probably paid him in cash, but I think that makes him a stronger fade in GPPs, and that's why I'm going with the Brady stack, baby. Passing game. Let's go. So anything else stand out to you while we're just we're live, we're doing it. So anything stand out just from initial glance?
I'm surprised that Najee Harris is so he's the 4th highest projected.
Well, he's just so like his work role is so safe. Like
yeah.
I think I get that. I just he doesn't have really high ceiling just because he's playing Denver and the offense is just limited because Big Ben is washed.
Yep.
Antonio Brown, George Kittle. I mean, well, he's not going to have any ownership, so that's going to go down.
Nope.
So man. Yeah, Waller will just be the highest roster. Dalvin Cook's will go down. Nobody's sleeping on the Dallas receivers. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, it's just not the offense we expected it to be. They have an actual defense now, and they're just running the ball so much. I don't know if I want to be playing chalky Cowboys receivers. I think we can do better.
We can do better.
I think so.
All right. I like that call, Jared. All right. We're going to go on. Thank you, for tuning in. Appreciate everyone that watched, stuck around. I love talking DFS. It's a good thing to talk out, to parse through, because there's a lot of game theory that goes into it. So it's not all about picking the right players. It helps to pick the right players, but it's also helpful to talk it through. So Jared, thank you for joining me. Guys, thank you for watching. Again, we'll be back next week. Good luck to everybody. Late swap. Always remember to late swap when you can. And